Tristan. Denise. And just while we're getting going here, also in the top right, either speaker view or gallery view, if everybody wants to go on speaker view, you should be able to see the speakers much better like that, because I'm actually pinning them all to the screen.
Well, Nikki, I have to hop over to my my other meeting, but I just wanted to say before I have to go, thank you for attending and for being a part of this amazing technology community that we have built here in South Florida. Thank you so much to Beth for the ASL interpretation. She's so awesome. And for all of the people here today. Beth always looks so happy. I always love how happy you look. But I have to do some other things this morning. But thank you, Nikki. Thank you, Monica, from our team for taking part in all the wonderful panelists. I'll look forward to viewing this all a little later on today. Have a good day, everyone.
Sure. Thank you, Joe. All right. So let me get started here by sharing my screen. I'm going to do, because we're about 5 minutes or so behind, so I'm going to try to do this pretty quick. Let's see. And let me know if for some reason you cannot see my screen. All right. So this morning, our discussion this morning, augmented, virtual, and mixed reality technologies. Our speakers, we've got Denise Mendez, the Principal Software Engineer at Microsoft Mixed Reality, Rob Petrosino, VP of Emerging Tech and Innovation at PeakActivity. And I'm going to give them a quick shout out there too. Thank you so much, Rob, and also Scott Townsend from their PeakActivity team on helping us pull this community coffee and discussion together. I really appreciate it. Peter Hutchen, Director at Magic Leap, and Tristan Cotter, GM at Americas at Varho. And this morning, I don't think they are on with us this morning. I don't think they were able to attend, but this is actually sponsored, presented by South Florida Business and Wealth Magazine, and also Beth Wagmeister, who we have here doing our ASL interpretation this morning. So thank you again so much, Beth, as well. There we go, sponsors. So building South Florida into a tech hub. This is our slogan / mission statement. You guys have probably, anybody that's familiar with our organization has seen this around everywhere. But we recently, last year with our 5th year anniversary, expanded to covering all of South Florida, and also our name change. So which is now, if anybody's familiar with Palm Beach Tech, that's why you're seeing Tech Hub South Florida, which is our new name as of, I think, about 2.5 weeks ago. So we wanted a name that matched our mission. So our community creed, Tech Hub South Florida is wholeheartedly committed to building a welcoming, collaborative, and inclusive community for all. We put inclusivity first, engage with others, and are considerate to all and don't sell to people. So in short, we welcome everybody that is a part of our tech community, no matter skin color. I mean, we want the most diverse, community out there that we possibly can, whether it's, we've got ASL interpretation, hard of hearing community, everybody we want to make sure has a seat at the table. More information on our organization, techhubsouthflorida.org. And a little bit about us. Again, sorry, because I'm going quickly this morning. Tech Hub South Florida is a nonprofit membership association building South Florida into a tech hub. We currently have over 200 corporate members, wonderful community partners, thousands of talented tech professionals, and building an inclusive tech community driving innovation and growth. These are, of course, not all, but some of our members: Boca Code, Office Depot, City Furniture, Social Mobile, PeakActivity, Digital Resource. We've got a ton of great both startup companies. We've got all the way from seed stage all the way to enterprise, and everybody in between. A little bit about the membership. We've got 4 different membership levels, well, 5 if you include the individual members. 4 individual corporate members with speaking opportunities, job listings, exclusive peer groups. We've got a lot going on. So again, if you'd like any information, go to techhubsouthflorida.org, and there's a little button on the top right that says join today, and you can actually see all of the different membership benefits there. A little bit about our events. We've got typically about 3 to 5 events depending on the week. And from our Monday night tech talks, community coffees, which is what we are doing this morning, our panel discussions, podcasts, which are also, actually this has to be updated on Tuesdays. And then our food for thoughts are actually each Friday. Those are educational workshops held at noon. Anybody that's looking for a job, if you go to our website, we actually have a tab that says careers, and there's a job board there. We also have a resume distributor. So if for some reason you're looking for the jobs, you don't see a job that looks perfect for you, but you still want to get your resume out there, you can just upload the resume. And when you hit submit, it actually goes to all of our members and companies that have signed up to receive the resumes. Last but not least, our Slack channel. We've got a pretty active Slack channel, southfloridatech.com/Slack. And also, if you'd like to be added to our e-newsletters that go out every Monday, you can actually just text us your email address, which is, I'm sorry, you could text it to 561-250-7206. And I am going to stop sharing my screen. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start by having each of the speakers introduce yourselves, tell us what organization you come from and a little bit about your role, and then we'll go right into the Q&A. And I'm just going to start with whoever's first on my screen. I've got Peter first.
Good morning, everybody. Peter Hutchen with Magic Leap. I'm a director over here and responsible for our North American enterprise sales segment. And really what we're trying to do is deliver the next chapter of digital transformation for organizations and amplify the performance of their employees. Excited to be here with you today and look forward to having this discussion.
Thank you so much, Peter. And next on my screen is Tristan.
Hello, good morning, everyone. I'm Tristan Cotter from Vario, and I'm the GM here for Americas, as it was mentioned earlier, which means I'm involved in all things go-to-market for this region, helping scale our customer base and our partnerships here. As Vario is a Finnish-based company headquartered in Helsinki, and we're making some of the world's most advanced VR and mixed reality headsets, known for super high resolution and kind of blending that super high res content virtually with the real world. And personally, I'm relatively new to the immersive tech space and VR world. I've been here for a little over a year, and prior to that was in the SaaS software arena for the previous decade. So definitely approach this from a software and a content perspective. And also, I think I'm unlike the rest, as I am the Yankee up north, not down in South Florida, but this might be a recruitment event for me, as it's been sleeting and snowing for the last couple of weeks and months. So I'm a little jealous of your guys' situation down there right now.
Well, that's a good thing. We need more people here. So we're hopefully making other people jealous too. We need more talent. So thank you, Tristan. Next on my screen, I've got Denise.
Good morning. I've been in tech for about 20 years. I'm a product of South Florida, actually. I went to school in Hialeah. I did my first 2 years at Florida International University. I graduated with my EE degree, electrical engineering degree from University of Florida. I worked at Motorola when they were big in South Florida for 15 years. I then transitioned to Magic Leap, where I was part of building out their first releasing of the first commercial product. And then I started with Microsoft's mixed reality team mid-year last year. So I've been in mixed reality watching the growth of the technology, and I'm really excited for this community and for trying to grow the tech industry in this area. I believe this is the next wave of computing. So for us to bring it to South Florida and make South Florida a powerhouse on the tech space, in the app space, and the new domains that will be created by this technology, it'll be part of why I do a lot of this work.
Very good. Thank you, Denise. And also want to give you a shout out and to all women in tech. So thank you for being on this panel as well. And last but not least, of course, Rob.
Hey guys, Rob Petrosino, VP of Innovation here at PeakActivity. I run the Emerging Tech and Innovation Department. We're servicing and working everything from product and software development within emerging tech that ranges from machine learning to augmented reality, virtual reality experiences, to also being SI implementators for these brand new technologies for customers across the board, whether it be retail, training, back-end work. It's pretty much everything that falls underneath my department. So really excited to be here. Been at PeakActivity for a little bit over 3 years, and originally hail from up north as well, originally from New Jersey, and happy to be in South Florida because I don't have to shovel anymore. So very excited to be on the call today.
Well, thank you so much, Rob. And then lastly, just to introduce myself, because I realized I didn't do that in the beginning. My name is Nikki Caboose. I'm the VP at Tech Hub South Florida. Simply put, my job is to continue building South Florida into a tech hub by helping businesses, supporting startups, and connecting talent. So if anybody has any information or any questions and wants information on membership or getting involved in any of our events or programs, please let me know. And I would like to go right into the Q&A. I know that that's the part that everybody's waiting for here. So I'm going to start out with, of course, I'll address each question towards one of the panelists, but then if anybody would like to add on to that, please feel free to do so. So my first question is actually going to be for Denise. So for those who may not know the difference, can you please describe or explain the difference between augmented, virtual, and mixed reality technology?
Perfect. If you think of the realities, the XRs, sometimes they're called XR for extended reality, or X like a variable in an algebraic equation where you can put your different technology in between. Augmented reality is kind of like the first layer. It's literally a digital layer, like Pokemon Go is a little Pokemon appears on your screen in front of the world. It doesn't really interact with the world, but it's just there as a layer. Kind of like the first version of AR was, I think the line in a football game on the screen, that it's a little line that shows you where the next down is. That's kind of like your first layer of AR with the augmented reality. It's just a single layer. Some people use it to mean more. It's kind of like now becoming an all-encompassing term in general, but AR is, for the tech world, is a layer. VR is the opposite end of the spectrum, where your whole entire world is overlaid with digital content. Your whole entire reality, you're transported into a new space, underwater, in space, wherever it is, but you're immersed in this new reality, and it has its own applications with training and other things in the technical sector that I'm sure we'll get into in this discussion. And then mixed reality is the merger between the two. The digital content actually understands the world around you. It uses algorithms, computer vision, and machine learning to read the world around you, know there's walls, roofs, objects, and actually the digital content can hide behind objects. It can actually hide under tables. It can hit the wall and bounce back down. So it's definitely, from a computing perspective, it's the most intense of what you're doing in that, but although VR might argue differently, but these are the different fields in which you can play. They all have really interesting use cases and a variety of different applications in the enterprise world. That is why these realities are so exciting.
Very cool. Thank you. Yeah. And a lot of this discussion is going to be, new for me as well. So I'm learning as I'm moderating too. So thank you so much for that, Denise. Was there anything that the rest of the panels wanted to add to that, or is everybody giving a thumbs up in agreement to Denise there? Everybody's good? All right, good. Good job, Denise. All right, so a next question here is for Rob. What are some current market trends that you're seeing for the use of the professional use of the reality technology that are genuinely creating a true ROI and changing the way that people are doing business?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of increases in the adoption of this mixed reality technology. There's been two major factors that I've seen. One has been COVID, and two is the understanding of the AR sphere in and of itself. Because of those both accelerating pretty rapidly, we've seen it able to affect every sector of the business lifecycle. For front end and marketing purposes, augmented reality experiences are increasing brand retention and understanding when you're first impacting or starting with a brand. Understanding that through an Instagram, augmented reality experience or anything along those lines of Snapchat, that first impact is causing a longer brand retention or the ability to recall who that customer is. In the purchasing cycle, so if we think of customers who are looking to purchase either high ticket or value add items, the ability to see and understand what that is in the space, we've seen experiences with Home Depot be able to drive 150% increase in conversion because they're going through the user is able to go through an augmented reality experience. On the back end of things, we think of training and back of the house type work. We see decreased cognitive load through augmented reality experience as well, where a person can go through a training experience and go for a longer period of time, but actually be able to recall the experience in more completeness, which is fantastic. So when we think of those just areas alone, AR has been a massive uptick because of that. And it's really, really interesting to see how it affects overall. Verizon just did a great study too, where they're saying, 61 or 68%, excuse me, of users that go through an emerging technology experience on the front end are more likely to convert throughout the life cycle of the experience. So it's really affecting all facets, and everyone within the business ecosystem should be looking at AR in some way, shape, or form to further their business.
Thank you, Rob. Does anybody want to add to that as well?
I'd actually like to add to that as well. Like a lot of the research, a lot of the things that I've seen, not necessarily just inside of Microsoft, but there's like some really good resources. Like I think it's called AR Artillery, where they put out, they try to reverse engineer how many Oculus Quest have been sold. Manufacturing is constrained right now because of the coronavirus. And there are companies that right now are doubling down on that technology. Like you couldn't buy a Quest for almost 6 months. And it wasn't necessarily because it was just a supply constraint. It was because the demand was so high. And we've seen that in a lot of the different technology sectors on the hardware side, right? In order to enable some of the massive use cases, particularly in the mixed reality and the virtual reality, you need more hardware. And so the trend is right now, the hardware has increased in a magnitude that no one really anticipated because of coronavirus. So definitely that has been compressed. And now like with the adoption of the WebXR, so WebXR, it's not something that we got into necessarily, but it is definitely a really interesting, because South Florida has a lot of like app development and a lot of online and web development. And now with like the shrinking of the physical big box store and the retail sector, now we're moving to more of an online model. So now retailers need to figure out how to get to their customers in a 3-dimensional way, even though they're in 2-dimensional spaces. So WebXR has adopted, now there's a lot of capabilities where you can go on you can go from your Chrome browser, your Edge browser, your Safari browser straight into a VR headset and see that content without having to download an application. So now there's a lot of move into the web space, into the application space and the web to enable the XR spaces. And a lot of the companies like Microsoft are moving their software developer kits to be more agnostic to the hardware platform. So Microsoft has the mixed reality toolkit, which is web XR friendly, VR friendly for VR headsets that support it, as well as with the HoloLens. So the market has been compressed, which is amazing. We're going to see it a lot. It was like a 5 to 10 year roadmap. And I know it's definitely moving closer for the consumers than it was before.
Yeah, to further Denise's point, I think there's a big response with just the adaptation or implementation of LiDAR being on, your newest phones. We were talking about objects interacting with different, digital beings, we'll use Pokemon because they're easy, but Pokemon jumping around and hiding underneath tables. The enablement of LiDAR on personal devices is fantastic, and moving it into the web, there's been a rapid slope for that. Niantic, who created Pokemon Go, has purchased, I think, like 11 companies in the last 6 months. But then when we think of headsets, with the Magic Leap or Vario, their expansion, what they're capable of doing is so much more because of the computing power that they have harnessed behind it. So those personal device, personal cell phone device augmented reality experiences and virtual reality experiences are astronomically being exploded because of COVID and just the demand crunch that there is on these physical devices that would be outside of those.
I'd add one other thing that to build on what they each both were mentioning, and Denise talked about earlier, is around the future of computing. I think that something that's been accelerated here as well with COVID is that people haven't always thought about headsets or HMDs as personal objects. There have been a lot more shared tools within an organization in a lab that 20 or 50 people might interact with, whereas now people are seeing the opportunity to deploy more of these the same way they look at like the personal computer, a laptop, or a phone, which I think is only going to further accelerate, this space, which is, pretty interesting.
That's actually a pretty interesting point, Tristan. And I actually, this was kind of perfect that you guys had brought up some of the different games there, because that went actually right into my next question. I'm going to address this towards Peter, is, how has adopting entertainment and game technologies helped with the product development for AR/VR?
Yeah, for Magic, entertainment and game technology segment has been an extremely rich source of learning and growth for product development. We made a decision to pivot our business model towards enterprise and the needs of enterprise customers and amplifying the performance of enterprise employees. But some of the foundational pieces of how we consume open source software, how we leverage cloud native design, how we are opinionated about our point of view in terms of how we build great experiences for consumers, all started with that gaming and consumer-oriented model. So to me, I think I'd echo some of the other panelists' talk points before that. We're really at this intersection where in 2012, 2013, I think a lot of the developers in big companies knocked on the door of a line of business executive and say, hey, this cloud computing thing seems like it's real. It seems like there's some value that we can bring to the business. And what I want to do is go rent some computational infrastructure from an Amazon, Google, or Microsoft. And I think there's some value to the business because it will speed up my ability to develop great software and create these great experiences, which will drive revenue, brand recognition, operational efficiencies for the business. That ecosystem of developers now, I think, is looking for the next chapter. They're looking for the next opportunity to do innovation at scale. And really that's what this mixed reality segment is all about. If you unpack some of the technologies that all the panelists here are bringing to market, what you'll see is this fundamental uncoupling of the computational infrastructure and the front end presentation logic. And so for me, that's a really exciting thing to offer up to the South Florida development community is, hey, we're ready for you. If you've had an opportunity to build some great experiences and you've got some familiarity with cloud native design, there is an incredibly rich set of capabilities and APIs and containers and data services that we're trying to connect into this end user experience. And so that's how we think about product development at Magic Leap. And a lot of that learning came from our experiences in the consumer market.
Very good. And I did want to ask also, I was going to address this towards Tristan, is, obviously, I think a lot of people started kind of being aware of what AR, VR was and mixed reality technologies because of gaming. But Tristan, can you talk about some of the different ways that reality technology can support research, education, training in multiple industries such as healthcare, aviation, automotive? What are some different ways that we're seeing this being used?
Sure. And as you just started rattling those off, the application and use case is almost limitless. And to Rob's point earlier, it's hard to imagine an industry that won't start to apply this either, immediately already have put that in place, or we'll start to explore this over the next few years. But let's start with training. I think that's probably the most obvious or popular application in VR and mixed reality. So a couple examples that you mentioned in those particular arenas like aviation, automotive, et cetera, is pilot training is really big, not only for, planes, but also we're starting to train astronauts to go to the International Space Station. It's also happening across the medical space with surgical simulation or maintenance training, manufacturing, oil and gas, anything, it's good for repetitive tasks. Anything could be taught and trained really effectively with, immersive technology. But, one of the things that we think about is that it's also a fantastic use to train effectively for dangerous scenarios in a really safe, immersive way. And in general, it reduces costs of training, speeds up proficiency. There's tons of research in terms of adoption and how much the training sticks. And also you're able to get really valuable information around human performance with assessments of the different biometric, data points that you can bring into it, like eye tracking, et cetera, instead of and this kind of bleeds into and transition to the next thing that we were talking about there, which is research, is that you can build really realistic scenarios and get behavioral insights back in real time, rather than afterwards when you design some sort of a research project, then you do interviews and you understand afterwards with questions. You can actually learn and glean a lot in real time. And then education, I think that it's clear that the world's moving into an arena with online learning, with Zoom and these other platforms being really popular, but we're starting to see remote collaboration and of taken to the next level with use of mixed reality or VR. And also just a more interactive way of learning about typical things that you might have used a textbook or a 2D surface for online environment, like learning about the human anatomy and being able to move around and see how the body works in a way that's a lot more educational or immersive, viewing and manipulating molecular structures, taking a field trip to a museum or going anywhere around the world and teaching history. I think that there is so much opportunity in any of these areas that people are really starting to put in motion. So those are a few that we see commonly, but I mean, it is really limitless. And I'm sure others on the panel could speak for a long time on this topic.
Kristen nailed a bunch of them. For me, I would just add that we're obsessed with these data-driven outcomes.
Yeah.
And we do a lot of efficacy testing across the spectrum of use cases that he just described. And I think the easiest way that I sort of think about it is training, certification, collaboration style use cases. And if you take a unit of productivity as a measurement, if I create an offer letter for Tristan, from the time that offer letter gets extended to the moment where he's a productive employee and able to do his job, that's a sunk cost for the business. So, and a lot of the large retailers and industrial manufacturers we talk to, there's, a 6, 8, 10, 12, 16-week process that they go through for a new hire to get on board and actually start to be productive. For certifications, there's always at least a week or two of training, and that's on the minimum side. And so what we're trying to do, all of us, is condense that and to drive operational efficiencies. And when you apply those numbers at a big scale, there's some real benefit to the businesses that we're talking to by adopting these types of technologies.
Yeah, to further that, we always think of, or a lot of the times we think of some of the largest, most complex tasks that could be imaginable as like a use case, right? Like I'm sitting in a plane and I need to understand every single control, what they do, and be able to do it right away. But when you scale it down, you can do some of the most simple core processes, thinking of molecular structure of water and understanding what removing a single, molecule will do. Those experiences can solidify just as well as these high-end experiences. So without a doubt, there's such a wide spectrum for use cases. No one should feel like their business is, well, we have this, particle collider, we're working on CERN and we have to make sure that this part is spinning at X number of miles per hour a second. That's not the only use case that's out there. It goes all the way down to augmented reality experiences to create someone a really happy, enjoyable social media experience. So it's so wide of a spectrum that it's awesome to see it applied to every single industry. And it's really across the business, which is great. I mean, there's very few technologies that you can look at. I mean, Peter mentioned cloud technology, but it's affecting every aspect of the business and at such a rapid deployment. It's really impressive to see.
I just wanted to add real quick on Rob's example of like a little particle or an electron. On the ed tech space, spatial reasoning is the kind of barrier of entry into STEM fields for every student. Spatial reasoning is the weed out class in statics and dynamics and engineering, in chemistry, in circuits for electrical engineering. It is like where every single student fails, and it's not really taught well in 2 dimensions. It's something that has to be taught in 3 dimensions. And it's something I struggled with in school, and it wasn't until my dad took a broomstick and showed it to me on a table and told me the table's the plane and the broomstick is the vector, blah, 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 blah. the EdTech space can stand to improve the quality of students, the capabilities of those students early on, so that they can make it through those barrier courses into getting into STEM from like, you know, an entry point. So, and it's definitely, this is well studied. This is not something new. UM has been trying to solve for it and doing stuff in VR. There's a lot of good work and work that would be financially amazing to do in the EdTech space. And that schools, in particular colleges, are interested in trying to solve for.
Thank you, Denise. And actually, that was going perfectly right into my next question as well, because I wanted to talk a little bit more about, you know, what is you guys' opinion of like the level of readiness of some of our students that are coming out of the universities, and are they ready for this type of work? What are some of the skills that we need to ensure that students have? I mean, I had this question just for myself, you know, that I was going to ask Rob, but I mean, I would love to hear from any of you what you guys are seeing within your organizations of the students that you're getting, or the new tech talent.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to kick it off. I know everyone's going to have an opinion here, which I'm super excited about. So PeakActivity is actually working with a couple different university and colleges to help build out curriculum when we think of what would be the ideal person coming out of a university or school and they wanted to get into this business, or what can they study on their own. When we think of augmented reality experiences, it is truly thinking about things in 3 dimensions. I know that seems a little bit corny, but it's real. When you think of like a baseline, you know, if you're thinking about sculpting, you have to think of something in 3 dimensions and the subtractive nature of it. But with augmented reality, not only can you be reductive, but you can also be additive. So that level of complexity in and of itself is going to span a lot of different courses. So we think of technical development skills, whether it's for iOS or Android. We think of, you know, understanding the most recent SDKs that are out there for some of the hardware technology, and then also being able to rationalize and understand the creative end of the spectrum. So you really are looking for like true unicorns and building true unicorns who can understand not only visually what the creative director or the storyboard is trying to portray, the interactivity that needs to be created, but also the technology that needs to support it, especially if it's being supported by like heavy back-end data. So that architectural, creative director, and designer is really tough to encapsulate. And hey, this is the perfect core curriculum. So understanding and making sure that there's really strong internships and making sure that we're tying to communities to do that is really fantastic. So no, I don't think that there's a specific course right now that encapsulates all that, because you're going to need things from, you know, University of Central Florida, like theme design and, and working on like Disney kind of rides, all the way down to understanding really strong like front end and back end development schools. So it is a definitely interesting space to be in. But if you're able to encapsulate that, or at least have a foundational layer across the board, you're going to make a big impact to anyone that's looking to kind of build these experiences.
Yeah, I might answer it from a slightly different point of view. I totally agree with everything Rob said, but I would add some skills that are, you know, not the types of things that get taught in university. I think what we're looking for are folks who have been through some sort of adversity and been able to work through that adversity. There's a certain amount of scrappiness that you need in the early days of an emerging industry. And that quality is tough to teach. And there's definitely, I have never seen a class that teaches scrappiness or adversity. It tends to come, you know, through life experiences. And it's a core part of how we're interviewing people right now. If you're out on LinkedIn, you'll see we're, you know, Magic Leap's hiring across the board. I'm sure Microsoft is as well. You know, there's an aggressive push to find the right types of people. And so for me personally, in the interviews that I'm conducting right now, the qualities that I'm looking for, especially for students at a school, is tell me about a time that you worked through adversity and give me some examples of how that has helped you become the person that you are today.
I have to laugh.
Oh, go ahead, Denise.
Sorry. That was the question that I was asked at Microsoft's Mixed Reality group. It's like, tell me how you work through adversity, because the space is so new. It's like, if you have some kind of math capabilities, you have some kind of spatial reasoning, you got some kind of coding skills, like with that and the ability of like, yes, I can, and total growth mindset of like, I don't know, but I can learn. That's the way that we all succeed right now in this space. There's no playbook. There's no book that you can go out and read right now and say like, this is how you do mixed reality or XR or AR right. Everybody's trying to learn at the same time. Right. So 100% on the scrappiness and 100% of working through adversity. It is the way right now.
Yep.
Yeah, it's all heart, not head. Unfortunately, we can't Google any of the answers to a lot of the complex solves that we have. You're not going to find a Git repo on how to build an augmented reality experiences that works on the Magic Leap and Vario headsets and how to tie the SDKs together. But if you're willing to put in the work and you love this space, you'll be successful. But yeah, there's no, hey, you got to check these boxes right now.
And that's a really good point that all you guys are bringing up also, is just to, I think students in general and anybody that's looking and getting into, you know, any area of technology, is that the soft skills, the personality traits, just your mindset are just as important sometimes as the hard skills. And I think that maybe it sounds like that's even more in this instance. Were you going to add something there, Tristan?
I was just going to say, on top of the grit and the determination, there's also, you need, like everyone's been mentioning, we're all building this industry and market together within an organization and across organizations. So you also need to be a good teammate and to be able to work well across different teams and groups, as there is a ecosystem that all relies on each other within this, including the people on this panel here. We're all moving and driving this. And so I think that's another important thing that we look for here, is people that aren't just, you know, focused and specialized and really good at what they do, but they can work and collaborate to come up with solutions, as we're going to have to be quite creative to solve problems that haven't been solved in a lot of cases before.
Yeah, and I'd actually love to, because I'm watching the chat as you guys are talking as well, and I'd love to address one question that came up here from Mark McGuire. He says, you know, as a deaf person, I'm very excited about the future of smart glasses from a travel and tourism point of view. I'm curious about, how does your company include people with disabilities in the design, development, and marketing process? And if a person with disabilities were to apply for work in that particular process, what skill sets are you looking for? So that was kind of a two-part question. If anybody wants to take that.
Yeah, so I can start here. Hi, Mark. I'm hard of hearing, so you know, everyone is always asking like, hey, how does that affect the experience? And it has to be a multi-channel experience, not only visual, not only haptic feedback, but also sound, spatial audio. These are all terms that are going to be very important. So whenever you're looking at an experience, you have to look at that holistic viewpoint. It can't just be geared towards one area. So yeah, within travel and tourism, fantastic use cases. We've actually seen teams that are already out there that are using spatial computing and, you know, augmented reality headsets or head-mounted displays to translate American Sign Language back to each user, which is really, really interesting use cases. So they're definitely out there, and it's definitely something that we think through at every step of the process. But yeah, it's definitely not easy. What's great is that this is a door opener and not a door closer. So a lot of the precedences that, you know, Apple, Microsoft, et cetera, have done on their phones and other software, we're trying to carry into the space is how I'd approach that.
I wanted to add that what's really one of the most amazing things in the people that I've met in the mixed reality space, there is a love for the space of accessibility, because for the first time from a technology perspective, cameras that can understand the world around you. You've got microphones that can do voice recognition. You've got cameras that look at your eyeballs and can try to at least see where your eyes are moving towards. There's an opportunity with the world of machine learning and artificial intelligence to bring the world closer to the people and the abilities that they have. There's work in it. It's a mountain of work that needs to happen. There's a lot of interest in the space. It's hard, right? And I've seen extremely passionate people that are trying to build this because they see the potential with mixed reality. Microsoft has a long lens on accessibility, and they see a lot of they constantly looking to see what they can do to make their devices, their machines, what we're building closer and more accessible. There's standards that we're trying to follow, but it still requires work. And I know companies, Microsoft is an equal opportunity employer. So from a skill set, if you can code, if you have any kind of game development experiences, game development experience itself, that can definitely help you in what you can bring to the equation to these organizations to start with. If you want to get started, there's a lot of things going on in WebXR itself, because now you can be more agnostic to the headset. They're starting to bring more interactions into WebXR. Right now it's more mouse-based interactions, but the mouse is supposed to, get replaced by a head, or wherever your head is positioned in the world using a physical head-mounted display. So there's places that you can get started with WebXR just to understand the space. It's such a different mindset than regular two-dimensional coding. It's so different than coding for like a database, because it requires a new shift in thinking in design. So those that are working in that space, I saw Professor Levine, Michelle Levine, and her students at Broward College are working on the device, and now they have a completely different lens when they build for a device like a mixed reality headset like the Magic Leap, which is what they were building on. It gives you a different way to code, which is really important in this space. So like a recommendation is to those headsets are expensive. So if that's not accessible, play with this world. I post as a toolkit for you to play in VR. Babylon JS, JavaScript based. It's a web-based tool. The engine, all the tools are online. You don't need to do things. There's a company called Metaverse, VRSE, that's building. It's like a Unity, kind of like Unity engine online, where you can do all the renderings, all the graphics online as well. So there's tools available to start thinking in this 3D space.
That's awesome, Denise. Thank you so much for all that information. Yeah, and I see a bunch of people now are dropping information there in chat too. So feel free, if you guys are connected to this realm at all, to drop your information and connect with each other. So actually, my next question, I actually had addressed to you as well, Denise, is just, and I think both you, Denise, and Rob kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier, but what is currently the biggest technological challenge when creating reality technology?
I think the mindset is, finding people that have that kind of, they have a tech focus, they have a tech background, they can code, they have domain in this space, but also being extremely humble and like, I really don't know what the heck I'm doing, but I am here to learn and absolutely scrappy about it. Being able to expand that kind of mentality while still having that, while still being.
Uh-oh.
Those right individuals. Is it audio?
Oh. I'm losing you a little bit. You just kind of jumped in and out there.
Okay, apologies.
That's okay.
Yeah, so that's kind of like the mindset is definitely one of the hindrances to the technology. The other thing is the supply chain right now is actually putting a big constraint on the speed in which the head-mounted displays can actually be developed. So there's this kind of like a chicken and the egg scenario. There's a lot of interest in this space, and we can't build these things fast enough in order to just even meet the current market demands. Even though Microsoft, I know Magic Leap, we can scale, a lot of the enterprise companies that are trying to jump into the space, I think it was Tristan who mentioned automotive earlier. Automotive is huge from a training perspective, from when you have a mechanic that needs to work on a car and the car has now, like cars are evolving at a rate that has been unseen. Right now it has computers, it has all these other components that it didn't have before. So it wasn't like a distributor is a distributor in every single car, regardless of who made that model. Now it's like, what car are you working on? Because it's completely different. And as Ford and other companies emerge with their next generation cars, like in order to be able to train the mechanics in this space as quickly as possible is a challenge. So while we have the technology there, Now, the next barrier of entry is the enterprise customers who do not have the capabilities themselves to deliver this. So they're looking for first-party developers or third-party developers to develop these for them. So there's like, we have the hardware, it works. We have the SDK, they work. Now we need the army of people that can go and deploy this into the industry.
I agree, and I think that was really well said. And I love the automotive use case example. If you just think about how many electronic vehicles are coming online, and you know, when you unpack what's underneath the hood in those cars, that same mechanic who's fixing your current you know, vehicle is going to have to be retooled and certified and trained, or new people are going to have to come in and learn those systems in order to service your vehicle. So we're kind of a little out front of that right now, but not a lot. And getting this set of capabilities into the hands of non-technical users in a way that's simple but elegant, you know, is the challenge that all of us are going to work through over the next couple of years. It's exciting.
Yeah, and automotive is one of the more mature spaces or vertical industries that have adopted VR and these immersive technologies for decades now, along with aerospace, defense, et cetera. And so even if we pull us before, like VR and mixed reality is heavily involved in designing those same cars that then need to be upkept and maintained. And that's now moving from these clay models to virtual models that then people can do remote design reviews from all over the world, from Korea to Europe and North America, together in one room, like the same way we're in a Zoom session right now, designing and doing these reviews, which you might have had to fly all the way. In an example with like Kia, somebody from Europe would need to fly for 4 days to meet for 1 hour on a design review with stakeholders that now can just jump online together and meet and review something all in real time. And that's, I mean, that's away from families. That's the travel of a 20-hour flight, being in hotels, being away from folks, and also just like think about what else you can do with that. So there's like a human element to this with some of this technology, but then there's also the hard costs also associated with this, which is pretty incredible when you start to think about the end-to-end of how this is starting to be used, as Rob mentioned earlier, in so many different parts of the workflow or life cycle in different departments. It's starting to affect so many different groups, even just within like taking that industry, for example, the automotive space.
Thank you, guys. And I did want to let everybody know, because I'm watching the time as well. We've got about 7-8 minutes left here. So we've got quite a few questions. So I'm going to try to go through these quickly and maybe condense a couple of them. But I did want to ask a two-part question to you, Peter. Is I noticed actually in chat here, there's actually a ton of educators. I'm seeing people from K through 12 and higher education that are all in here. I see another question just came through from Ed. So we do have a lot of educators that are listening. My next question to you is, has there been any concerns on how virtual reality or mixed realities might interfere with like the psych development of the user, especially in young users? And are there any health concerns there for anybody that maybe is in the K through 12 realm?
Yeah, that's a great order. And maybe I'll build on something that Denise, you know, sort of started earlier about the differences between AR and VR and mixed reality. But I think there are some well-known studies related to people experiencing motion sickness in a fully immersive environment. And again, just to kind of keep it simple, that is, you put the device on and the rest of your physical world disappears and you're in this, you know, completely immersive experience. So those types of environments are great for training use cases, and they tend to be the types of things that K through 12 educators use for helping students learn. There are some, you know, again, well-known studies of those types of, you know, environments causing motion sickness. And as a result of that, Magic Leap has made this conscious decision to separate the compute from the actual head-mounted display. So we, you know, have a puck that sits on the hip of a user and is tethered to a set of glasses. And part of the reason for that is it eliminates this motion sickness because you're actually still seeing the physical world around you. You're just overlaying a set of digital content to it. And the second reason, and this ties into the safety for students, is you're removing the heat from the head, right? If you think about taking your laptop and just applying it to the side of your head, imagine how much heat that generates over the course of a day. The same compute power that you've got in your laptop sits in a puck on your hip versus around your head. And so that's a design decision that Magic Leap made that we feel benefits students as well as all of our users.
Very good. Thank you for that too. And also to kind of go along with that question, so Ed Mullen from Think had asked the question here, how do you see AR, VR affecting K through 12 education in the next 5 to 12 years? And what companies are leading in this space? That actually kind of went along with one of my questions that we have here in the run of the show, was just what resources are there out there for parents, teachers? I mean, anybody, where can they look for resources and maybe companies that are leading in this area?
Yeah, start. I'm sure everyone's got an opinion on this, and I'll keep it short because I know we're running out of time. I think what we're trying to do is take complex, education scenarios and make them very, very simple. And I'll just give one quick example. We've talked a lot about training use cases today, but we're also spending quite a bit of time doing remote assist, see what I see, time to resolution type use cases. And I think where that's important is for students who need to have a hands-on experience with a device. And so with Magic Leap, you can physically put on the goggles, you can turn on the cameras, and then if I'm in the room looking at, let's say, some piece of equipment like a table saw, and I'm going through an exercise on how to replace the blade of that table saw, I can have experts looking at the same thing and annotating in my environment step by step by step to walk you through how to safely change that piece of equipment around. And so for me, it's a very simple way for an educator to bring a subject matter expert into the environment of a novice or newer student and help them learn. And those are all the types of use cases that we're collectively going after, but particularly in education, we're trying to take a complex thing and make it very, very simple.
Well, thank you. And we've got just about 2 minutes left here, so I'm going to skip a couple of questions that we had planned here. Unfortunately, I feel like this needs to have a part 2. But just to kind of sum this up, I wanted to see if each of you can kind of real briefly just give us, your idea of where you see mixed reality technologies and the future of it going over the next 5 to 10 years in the business sector and the professional sector. Just in general, what can we expect to see?
I'm happy to start on this one if you guys know everyone's going to go around. I think the eventual use case, when we think of ever is a long time, but I think the eventual use case is that you're going to at some point no longer have a personal laptop. I think it's going to be a mixed reality headset that enables the same computing power, same cloud structure, same access to data on the back end side, where you can form and functionally do all of your work in the same fashion with more ease of use and a higher degree of trust in the experience. Just like the revolution related to cell phones, I think it'll go the same fashion where you had pagers and cell phones overlapping for a little bit. You're going to have personal devices and laptops overlapping with AR tech. The same thing with cell phones in the future. I think that you're going to be able to put on this head-mounted display or display in some form or fashion, whether it's a contact lens or a pair of glasses, and have an AR experience that's going to be fueled by large sets of data sets in the back end. So I think it's going in that direction personally.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
I think that's a great way of putting it. I mean, that's what we're trying to do, is change computing for good. And I mean, if you think about even the concept everybody loves, like their second monitor, or in some cases get real extra and get a third monitor. With a headset, you could have 12 monitors if you wanted, like the limit, it gives you a lot more flexibility in terms of what you're able to do. It's portable, it's mobile, it's, there's a lot of advantages there. And I think that the other thing we'll see is it's going to continue to get more accessible whether that means become more affordable, it's going to become more powerful, more wearable. You know, from a content perspective, that ecosystem is going to build out further and make it much easier to deploy and scale. You know, I just think that those are all areas. I think the collaboration piece that we've talked a lot about is certainly not going anywhere and will only become a bigger part and more commonplace. People are still typically not meeting in one of these VR platforms or, you know, collaboration rooms. But I think that once people do experience that, for anyone that has, and I'm sure most people here on this panel have experienced that, it's really cool and it's really effective. And once you see it, you're like, man, going back to a Zoom, while as easy as it is and how effective it can be, I think that there is just going to be more as we think about the new future of work, with work collaboration remotely, with learning remotely, and everything else. I think that that's more and more like we see a lot of these use cases, no matter what it is, the remote collaboration being a big part of those experiences and having multiple people involved in any of those applications.
Yeah, the short answer for me on that one is basically like they're going to be winners or losers on the actual hardware over the next 5 to 10 years. I think what will be interesting for us as a community is how we coalesce around the software. And that's a pattern that's happened when we're talking client server, when we moved to web, when we went to cloud. And I think this is a really nice beginning for that collaboration. Is there's open source software out there that solves a lot of problems for all of us. We can start to iterate on how that gets adopted and implemented as part of a common model. I think we'll see the industry accelerating further.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, like, you know, I know Rob was showing us his phone with his Apple with the LiDAR that's happening. You know, the future is probably going to be closer to accessible for everybody. Is you have your phone and now you have your glasses attachment that's going on to it. That's what we all suspect Apple is doing. That's what we all suspect Facebook is doing. Snapchat's coming out with their glasses that'll be tethered to your phone, where the compute power is still in your pocket, but the new display or the new head mounted display is through a set of glasses that's on your face. And that's because, and you know, in order to become agnostic to this, those online platforms, the open source is again really important. That's where looking at WebXR, the web is a standard. The WWW is the World Wide Web is a standard, and their new standard is adopting more and more technologies to include input. You know, right now your mouse and keyboard are inputs, right? But we want other additional inputs. We want the IMU, the thing that tells your phone which direction it's in. We want to be able to stream these same inputs into the web as fast as possible to enable those experiences. So to get started without becoming too tied to a hardware platform, because there is a competition right now. There's a lot of unknowns in the hardware space. It's more geared for the enterprise that can afford to have a, you know, $3,500 piece of equipment assigned to every employee. You know, for them, it's not a big deal, but, you know, for you at home or for you as a small business owner, that's really expensive. So looking at those web standards and at least integrating there gets you ahead of the game for when the technology and the hardware gets more adopted by more people. And there is more standardization across the different platforms.
Thank you so much. That was a perfect place to end us, Denise. Thank you so much, Peter, Tristan, Rob, Denise. I mean, I'm seeing in the chat here, looks like we may need a part 2 at some point to this. So thank you very much. Some great information. I know I learned a lot. And thank you everybody who hopped on early this morning, 8 a.m. on a bright and early Tuesday. So just wanted to say thank you to everybody in general, and hopefully you guys have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Beth.
Thanks, everyone.
Appreciate the time. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a great day.